Hello and welcome to Whispers Reddit. We're thrilled to have you join our cozy corner where we dive into the most intriguing, heartwarming, and sometimes mysterious stories from Reddit. Whether you're here to unwind, get inspired, or simply enjoy a good story, you've come to the right place. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a whisper. Grab a comfortable seat, relax, and let's embark on this storytelling journey together. Thank you for being part of our community. Let's get started. Caught my wife cheating, moved on, and found new love until my ex tried to run over me and my new girlfriend in a jealous rage. I've been a lurker on Reddit for a while, but today I finally have a story to tell. Since my life has been so chaotic, I haven't had time to write about it, let alone breathe. Even though I've wanted to post this for months, I can now talk about what occurred to me now that everything has been resolved, and perhaps it will assist someone else avoid a similar circumstance. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm a 36-year-old man who married a 35-year-old woman named Carolyn for what I believe to be eternity. In the end, I will never be able to reclaim those 6 years of my life. At least I kept telling myself that our marriage wasn't awful. When we connected on Instagram, I truly believed I had struck gold. She seemed ideal, humorous, and beautiful. My early years were quite chaotic, so I was especially alert for warning signs. My dad was the victim of severe abuse from my mom, who would yell matches at 3 o'clock in the morning, throw plates all over the room, and basically take everything because he loved us and didn't want to leave. You can know that when I was dating Carolyn, I was constantly on guard. I spent 2 years scrutinizing every aspect of her life, including how she handled money, stress, and waiters, basically everything you should look for before committing to someone. To be completely honest, she aced every test. She was compassionate, tolerant, and giving qualities my mother lacked. I believed I had done my research, thoroughly examined her, and discovered a decent woman. I even recall telling my closest friend that I had finally ended my family's abusive cycle. I was mistaken about that one man, but I'll talk about that later. We got married in a gorgeous ceremony, purchased a charming suburban home, and began what I hoped would be our happily ever after. I had no idea that I was about to enter a nightmare, albeit a distinct one from the one I had known growing up. About 2 years and everything started to go south. I mean extremely south. Every month, like clockwork, we had huge blowout fights. Instead of being the couple everyone envied, it was also constantly over the most ridiculous stuff, like the dishes in the sink, my late work, her hanging out with her friends, or even the TV shows we watched. I really thought we could work things out, so I was working so hard to keep our marriage intact. This was the woman who would surprise me with weekend excursions and leave small messages in my lunchbox. How we had gone from that to her yelling at me because I had purchased the incorrect brand of coffee was beyond me. I recommended couples therapy because I'm the kind of man who thinks things should be fixed rather than thrown away. In fact, I pleaded for it. We attended exactly one session, and holy hell, what a fiasco that proved to be. Carolyn replied, "It's your idea, so it's your expense." So I selected a really competent therapist who specialized in married couples, scheduled all the meetings, and even paid for it out of my own pocket. The therapist began highlighting some communication problems and raising the possibility that Carolyn wasn't managing conflict in a healthy way. She cried uncontrollably, said the therapist was assaulting her, and vowed never to return. I was attempting to make her look crazy. She continued, calling the therapist a quack. I later learned that her father had passed away just before our arguments became increasingly heated. Grief does strange things to people, so I tried to be understanding, but she refused to talk about it, refused to receive assistance, and continued to get angrier and more aloof. Her yelling battles could wake up the entire neighborhood, but she never got physical or broke anything. On one occasion, our neighbors believed someone was being murdered and phoned the police. Carolyn was shouting at me because I had neglected to get her dry cleaners. We eventually settled into this strange pattern in which we essentially just shared a room and occasionally had sex. We would get up, leave for work, return home, have dinner while watching television, and then retire to bed, repeat. After rinsing, we hardly spoke anymore, which is the only reason the fights decreased in frequency, but I was still foolishly in love with her. That's sad, isn't it? I kept reminiscing about our early years, telling myself that we could return there with enough effort. I firmly believed in the for better or worse part of our marriage, vows. I suppose I overlooked the fact that those vows also included forsaking all others. I'll get to that part, though I was brought up to believe that marriage is holy, so perhaps I should have recognized the warning signs. You stick it out and work on it unless someone is being hit or cheated on. It turns out that I was unaware of one of those deal breakers that was about to happen. Allow me to explain how everything went wrong. I work at this dull corporate job, nothing special, just your average mid-level job, pushing papers and going to meetings all day, the kind where you're not important enough to fly first class, but you're important enough to travel. I had been dispatched to a business expo in a different state where I was expected to spend 4 days networking with potential clients and acting as though I was interested in PowerPoint presentations. My life chose to take a huge turn for the worse. At this point, our firm back home experienced a serious issue. 3 days into the expo, something involving servers crashing and losing customer data, the usual corporate emergency fare. Everyone was called back early by my supervisor. I quickly reserved the first trip home because I'm the devoted worker that I am, or perhaps I'm just a fool. You decide. I was thinking of this lovely dumb concept. Do you remember the romantic reunions in films where the husband surprised his wife? Yes, I did. Believe that would occur. I planned the surprise during my whole Uber trip from the airport. I stopped at a posh florist and spent $80 on her favorite flowers, which were pricey purple orchids that she always said brought back memories of our first date. I even got her some champagne and some of her favorite high-end chocolates. I believed that this might be a new beginning for us. I thought that this impromptu gesture would remind her of the reason she fell in love with me in the first place, since we had been acting so distant lately. When I got home at 2 p.m. with my flowers and chocolates, I felt like the best husband in the world. She worked from home on Thursdays, so it made sense that her car was in the driveway. The house looked normal, but I remember a few odd things, like her favorite playlist playing upstairs, which she only ever listened to when she was feeling especially happy. I thought she had a friend over for lunch or something, and there were 2 wine glasses in the sink. God, I was such a fool. I was so eager to surprise her by going straight upstairs to our bedroom, even though I could hear other sounds and the music was getting louder. My brain was not understanding what they were saying. Do you recall the horror movie scene where everyone yells at the character to keep the door closed? That character was me, and when I pulled open the door to my own bedroom and turned the doorknob, that 1 second turned every single pleasant memory, trusting moment, and I love you into ash. I will never be able to forget what I saw in that. She was acting as though I didn't exist and that our marriage meant nothing at all, not even trying to keep quiet about it, as I stood there completely watching the flowers I had bought fall to the ground and scurry like cockroaches when the lights were turned on. This was my wife, the person I had loved, supported, and built a life with for 6 years, and the same bed where I had hugged her after her father passed away and where we had discussed having children in the future. Audacity to try to scurry past me like I was a doorman, and I will never forget this. I lost it while he was struggling to put on his clothes and scattering items everywhere. Maybe I saw him with my wife, or maybe he thought he could just walk away from ruining my marriage. Before I even realized what I was doing, I put my hand around his throat. It wasn't a death grip, but it was a clear indication that he wasn't just walking away, rather than hitting him as you might think I gave him too open-handed. He slapped his face like a dramatic housewife from a soap opera, and I'm still wondering why I didn't just punch him. When I caught him with my wife, the man's face instantly changed from one of fear to one of rage, as if he were actually going to try to fight me in my own house. Can you imagine the sheer contempt and the audacity? He probably fed him stories about being single or separated, so I'm willing to bet he didn't know Carolyn was married and assumed I was some kind of crazy. My entire body shook as I turned back to Carolyn, the woman I had once dated, because I knew right away that this pathetic excuse of a man wasn't worth being charged with assault. He hadn't promised me anything, and he hadn't made a commitment to love and care for me until the day we died. He was just another man who couldn't control himself. The true traitor was still in that bedroom, probably thinking about how to deceive her way out of this situation. She was there fumbling with her bra as if it were a minor inconvenience, and the purple orchids I had bought were scattered all over the floor, probably crushed under the man's running feet. She claimed that the mirror had better lighting, so I hung it up for her last Christmas, and I just stood there watching her get ready in it. She was also taking her sweet time, avoiding my eyes in the mirror, straightening her hair casually, and acting as though she hadn't just ruined our entire marriage. As if I were a door-to-door salesperson who had interrupted her day, this woman gave me this annoyed look and said, "Why are you even back, Nat? I'm sorry, I can explain or any of that nonsense about fundamental human decency." The fact that I came home early and caught her cheating in our bed in the house we bought together, the house where I paid the majority of the mortgage, actually annoyed her. Ruined everything we had worked so hard to create. I've wanted to hit someone so badly in my life that my hand was actually twitching as I remembered how good it felt to slap her, a fair partner, but I just stood there helpless as she had the gall to say, "You weren't supposed to be back," as if I were to blame for her early return home or that I should have called ahead to set up a convenient time to catch her cheating. This woman's outrageousness was a minor setback in her otherwise enjoyable afternoon activities. As I stood there thinking about all the late nights at work she had told me about, the girls' nights out, and the time she had mentioned seeing her mother, I noticed that our wedding picture was on the nightstand, the same bedside table where she had set the breakfast I had made for her the previous weekend. She had been telling me she was too tired for sex in the same room for the past 3 months, but she clearly had plenty of energy for this stranger like a fool. I was about to find out how many men had slept in my bed with me because Carolyn hadn't finished talking. Then, this nasty jerk went completely crazy, acting as if I had just blown up our marriage. She started screaming and screaming, her face getting red and splotchy, just like when we fought. "You are to blame for this. If you had just told me that you were going home, this woman would have won an Olympic gold medal for her mental gymnastics." Even had the gall to say that I was the one who found out she had cheated on me. "But wait, things will get better. You rejected my request for an open relationship," she yelled, as though it somehow justified her behavior. Yes, 6 months earlier, she had asked me once in a drunken conversation, and I had refused because I was monogamous, so apparently she should do it anyhow in her insane belief that I have necessities. She went on to rant as though I were a monster for asking my wife to be obedient, effectively cheating on me. My palm was shaking with rage as I took 3 steps across the room, lifted my fist, and grabbed her by the collar of the shirt I had bought her for her birthday last month. She hurt me, and I wanted to hurt her too. I tried to do things without hurting you, but something broke inside of me. How considerate of her, how thoughtful of her. 6 years of devotion, trust, and love were reduced to I have needs. Every kiss, I love you, and the moments we spent together were all phony. Despite the fact that she had just destroyed everything I valued and demonstrated to me that our entire marriage was a sham, I wanted her to feel fear, but I was unable to do so after seeing the genuine fear in her eyes. I vowed never to put that expression on anyone's face, and my mom used to look at my dad with the same terror. With my hands still clenched but lowered, I moved back and let her feel a tiny bit of my pain in the dark. There is a part of me that still wishes I had given in to that anger, not because she didn't deserve it, but because I deserve better than to become what I've always feared. I'm glad I didn't there. Our 6-year marriage ended with my wife accusing me of discovering her infidelity while I was standing in my own bedroom, staring at this stranger in her face while surrounded by crushed purple flowers. The woman who used to kiss me goodbye every morning now accused me of not calling ahead to make arrangements for my discovery of her affair. This woman changed identities faster than a TV station. The moment I released her top, she was suddenly no longer afraid. No, in all of this, she was now the victim. Really, you were going to hit me. As I turned to leave, she yelled at my back, "This is the precise reason I no longer love you. You're not a man at all." She continued to speak, yelling every possible abuse as she followed me down the corridor. After 6 years of marriage, she was attempting to make me the antagonist in this tale. It was very convenient for her to go from shivering in terror to yelling abuse at the man she had just accused of hitting her. I didn't realize she wanted me to strike her until I spoke with my friend later that evening. Do you think that's possible? In order to transform herself from the unfaithful wife into the mistreated husband, she wanted me to lose my cool and give her something she could use against me. She most likely had it all figured out. She would cry about her violent husband, run to the police with a battered face, and take half of my belongings and my monthly alimony payments. I was being lured into domestic violence by the same woman who used to bring me soup when I was ill. In a weird way, the manipulation was almost impressive. I needed to leave that house. It practically smelled of treachery throughout the entire area, in our bedroom, on our linens, and in the air. Their colognes and fragrances were blended together. The aroma of another guy had contaminated the same bed where I had comforted her during panic attacks. I took my keys and money and went for a drive. I found myself at my friend Mark's house. I'm grateful for Mark. After glancing at my face, he pulled out the whiskey. Mark understood precisely what I was getting into because he had already been divorced. He said it like it was I had to get a lawyer as soon as possible. Here's the worst part though. Carolyn was working part-time at a boutique, essentially pretending to have a profession, while I was earning 6 figures. That meant I might have to pay this dishonest woman alimony in my state every month. The same lady who had just slept with another man might deplete my finances. That's the weird thing about the legal system. Even if you are the one who has cheated on, you still have to pay for it. However, Mark, being the astute jerk that he is, pointed out that adultery might alter the alimony figures. Keep a record of everything. He advised every email, text message, and receipt, anything that would show she was cheating on you. In this program, there is finally some good news. Perhaps I won't have to pay for her affair partners dates. After all, my mind was still racing. I had been a contented husband and father, organizing a surprise for my wife. Just that morning, I was now sitting in my friend's living room searching for divorce attorneys on Google, while attempting to keep my stomach from turning up whenever I thought about what I had just entered. I had no intention of attempting to mend our relationship in any way. I could be foolish enough to purchase pricey flowers for a wife who cheats, but I'm not foolish enough to overlook it. My phone started exploding when I was sitting at Mark's apartment. Because she couldn't control me in person, Carolyn allegedly decided to try to destroy me via text messaging. Holy cow, the things this woman sent me are unbelievable. Just last week, she texted me "I love you" with cute little heart emojis. She was now giving me detailed analyses that compared her affair partner's manhood with mine. In fact, she went so far as to write down how much more effective he was in bed than I was and how I could never please him the way he did. When I caught her cheating in our own bed, she even had the gall to tell me that her boyfriend had ruined her for other men, as if I would want her back. The best part was that she was furious that I had ruined her. But do you think that's possible? As if I should have? How could she have spent years pretending to be with me like she was writing a Yelp review for a bad restaurant? I'm glad Mark was there because he immediately told me to take screenshots of everything. He kept shouting document, 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 and he was absolutely correct. I saw those tiny message bubbles begin to disappear one by one, not even a single one, and I'm glad I was there because she was upset with me for interfering with her affair and accused me of being selfish because I had ruined her chance at true happiness by returning home early without telling her. This woman was performing mental acrobatics that would have pleased Olympic judges. Minute after she had finished her big tirade about her fantastic affair partner and my alleged flaws, I suppose she finally understood that when your husband earns 3 times as much as you do and a divorce is imminent, it might not be the best idea to write down your admission of infidelity. She resorted to using the same old slurs. After erasing all the proof of her affair, she called me all the names in the book, but she made sure to keep her afternoon actions out of the conversation. The speed at which she shifted from boasting about her affair to acting as though it never happened was actually rather astounding. It was like witnessing someone attempt to remove evidence from a murder scene, as those texts vanished in real time. Unfortunately, she was unaware that I had screenshots of every single item. She may have erased the text, but she was unable to erase the truth or the images of them that were now securely saved in the camera roll of my phone, ready to prove to a divorce judge why I shouldn't be required to pay this lady any alimony at all. That evening, Mark proved to be a wealth of information regarding divorce. He guided me through every step I needed to take, from gathering proof to protecting my financial accounts. In between shots of whiskey that night, I hardly slept at all, just mentally reliving everything while I browsed through my phone's evaluations of divorce attorneys. The 2 weeks that followed were a haze of meetings with various lawyers. Some appeared to have barely passed the legal exam, while others sought retainers that were more expensive than my automobile. Finally, I discovered Lucas, who didn't require me to sell my kidney to pay him, and who appeared to genuinely care about my problem. Lucas smiled broadly when I showed him the screenshots of Caroline's texting outburst and the pictures of our bedroom state. Despite his pragmatic approach, he acknowledged that we had a compelling case to lower or even eliminate alimony, but he warned me that regardless of the reason for the marriage's dissolution, our state's judges have a tendency to favor the lower-earning spouse. The first good thing that happened to me until I died, to be honest, was that I had someone knowledgeable and helpful by my side to help Caroline with her divorce papers. The exciting part that came next was that, for 3 weeks, this woman avoided the server by changing her schedule and acting as though she wasn't home, even having her mother tell the server that she had moved to Florida and that she probably hadn't worked out honestly for months. When the server finally caught her, Caroline became the queen of petty when the proceedings really got underway. She claimed she couldn't find bank statements, which I knew she had forgotten to bring necessary paperwork to meetings, was late for every appointment, and insisted on a thorough inventory of every item in the house. She also took the full 30 days allowed by law to respond, even at that point, out of pure hatred. She knew exactly what she was doing, dragging everything out as long as possible. Down to the last spoon, these ridiculous settlement offers kept coming in from her lawyer. She wanted my 401k in the house and alimony. The most annoying thing was that this woman, whom I discovered to be cheating on, was still seeing her partner, and we had been separated for months. Yes, mutual friends informed me that she was trying to make my life as miserable as possible while living her best life. She would suddenly change her mind or make demands whenever. We were about to come to an agreement, but she seemed to enjoy watching me waste money on legal bills. I could practically hear her laughing all the way to her boyfriend's bedroom whenever Lucas had to respond to one of her ridiculous proposals. I tried to get back into the dating scene while Caroline was working non-stop to prolong the divorce and drain my finances. I went through a phase where I hooked up with random women from dating apps, which isn't my proudest moment. I downloaded Bumble, Tinder, and other apps and tried to convince myself. I've always been the type of guy who wants to have a genuine connection, exchange inside jokes, and wake up next to the same person every morning. I felt empty inside from the whole casual sex situation, as if I were trying to move on. That was what it meant to move on, by having a few one-night stands, but each morning felt worse than the one before. Every pointless hookup served as a reminder to me of why I had declined Caroline's proposal of an open relationship. I needed something to keep my mind occupied, so I filled a hole with the wrong forms. Aside from job divorce paperwork and failed hookups, I used to read a lot and stay up all night to finish a book. However, after Caroline came along, life became hectic with 60-hour work weeks and monthly shouting bouts. Instead, I decided to go to this small independent bookstore downtown one Saturday instead of looking through dating apps, keeping an eye on my lawyer's emails, and watching my lawyer cats nap in the windows, creaking wooden floorboards, and that amazing old book. I felt completely lost as I stood in the sci-fi section because, clearly, the entire genre had changed while I was preoccupied with keeping my marriage intact. I'm talking about these large book series that were perhaps 15 volumes long, with titles that I couldn't even pronounce. The woman beside me actually laughed, but not in a mean way, just a soft, delighted sound that must have made me look very pathetic as I stared at the shelves with this puzzled look on my face. When I turned to face her, she simply smiled and gave me a. As she held this massive book that could have been used as a weapon, she asked if I needed help. I told her that I didn't know where to start, but that I was looking for some good science fiction. The next thing I knew, she was teaching me the fundamentals of modern science fiction while we were sitting in these cozy chairs in the corner. She was also very excited about it. When she talked about her favorite books, her eyes glowed and she had the adorable habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was excited about a series. A quick book recommendation turned into a 2-hour conversation about everything from modern space operas to classic Asimov. I told her about my favorite series from college, and she told me about a series from a parallel university that she liked for the first time in months. For the first time in months, I had a meaningful conversation free of lawyers' divorce papers and awkward Tinder pickup lines, and I forgot about Carolyn in the chaos. As I read it, I realized how different our text exchange that evening seemed from all those pointless Tinder texts. After our impromptu book club meeting, I finally found the courage to ask for her number because something about her made me feel like a kid again, even though my hands were shaking as I put it in my phone. Her recommendation for the 3-body problem and the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. On our first date, I knew I had to tell her about my ongoing divorce. I had mentally rehearsed this exchange a dozen times, expecting her to run away when I mentioned my crazy soon-to-be ex-wife, but Emma, yes that is her name, just took a sip of her wine and said, "Thank you for being honest. At least you are addressing your baggage, which we all have, as simple as that." There was no criticism, no strange looks, and no awkward attempts to switch the subject. She also joked that she wouldn't have to. Questioning whether a man she was dating was secretly married or going through a divorce, Emma was the complete opposite of Carolyn. Whereas Carolyn would yell, Emma would calmly explain things during arguments and give Carolyn the attention she needed. Emma also showed genuine interest in my work, remembered small details about subjects I had brought up weeks earlier, and never once made me feel bad about going through a divorce. The best part was that when we first met, I wasn't even attempting to locate her in a bookstore, 2 people connected through science fiction, and without the use of dating apps or friend hookups, this stuff cannot be made up. After 5 months of dating Emma, I was totally enamored with her. She made me feel at ease in every way, including sending me book recommendations while I was at work, leaving small notes in the books she lent me, and listening when I shared my day. Caroline, however, kept putting up one challenge after another during the divorce process, always finding a new method to. Emma was very patient throughout the entire process. She never complained about being with a legally married man or put pressure on me regarding the divorce. Instead, she would simply support me during the annoying phone conversations with Lucas and reassure me that this would also pass. I was finally starting to feel content again, not content to just act that way naturally everything. She tried everything, including missing signatures, contested assets, and joint accounts. Went completely crazy at the same time. I had just spent a great Saturday with Emma, shopping and having lunch at this cute little cafe. As the sun was setting and we were heading back to her car in the mall parking lot, we were talking about what movie we should watch that night. I was listening to her laugh about something 1 minute, and then everything came crashing down. The engine screamed as if someone had stepped on the throttle pedal, and I heard it before I saw it. When I turned to look at the sound, I noticed that this car was. I was about to call 911 when I heard the tires squealing again, the car's engine still roaring as it backed up after colliding with another car. She was speeding straight at us, mostly toward Emma, and I grabbed her arm out of sheer impulse to pull her away, but I was not fast enough, and her leg was clipped by the car, and I watched in horror as it simply broke. I will never be able to forget the sound of her bone cracking and her scream. When I realized that this was not an accident, the driver was trying to hit us again. Emma's leg was bent at this horrible angle, and she was crying in pain. I knew that if I didn't move her, we would both die, and my heart was pounding so hard that I thought it might explode. I took her by the arms and pulled her between 2 parked cars. Each time she moved, she cried out in pain, but I had to keep going because the car slammed into the cars we were hiding between as it charged forward. Once more, every auto alarm in the area was triggered by the driver. When the driver's door opened, Carolyn was there getting out of the car as if she were going to a dinner party. She looked exactly like she had when I last saw her at our lawyer's office, but now she had a crazy expression in her eyes that I had never seen before, and her hair was styled. The crash's extreme violence at this moment had everyone screaming and racing toward us from all directions with their phones out, and the entire parking lot was in chaos with people shouting, car alarms going off, and Emma sobbing next to me. I swear to God that time stopped. Wearing the same blazer she used to wear to work and looking perfect as usual, she gave the impression that she hadn't just tried to kill 2 people in broad daylight. This was made even more horrifying by the sharp contrast between her normal appearance and what she had just done. This wasn't just any drunk driver or random road incident, it was my soon-to-be ex-wife, who had allegedly been watching us and decided that if she couldn't have me, she'd rather see me dead. This was no longer just about Carolyn and me. I was afraid that Carolyn might have a weapon or try to finish what she started, so I kept one eye on her while holding Emma close to keep her calm. When I heard Emma's whimpers of anguish and saw her fractured leg, I felt as though I was witnessing someone transform into a monster in front of me. Emma had recently tried to kill an innocent woman whose only crime was dating her soon-to-be ex-husband. I hadn't been married to this woman for 6 years, and even the woman I had caught cheating in our bed wasn't this one. This was something completely different, a vengeful person posing as my ex-wife. The reality of what had just happened hit me hard. In fact, Carolyn had actively planned to kill us. She must have followed us, waited for the right opportunity, and then made a conscious effort to run us down in the middle of the day. I honestly thought she was going to try to finish what the car had failed to accomplish when she started to come toward us, her heels clicking on the sidewalk like a twisted countdown, but her eyes were burning with a ferocious hatred I had never seen, not even during our most intense arguments. Fortunately, a man who appeared to be a linebacker grabbed her before she could reach us, and she kept trying to push forward like a furious animal straining against a leash. Even after that, as I was trying to calm Emma and check her injuries, I couldn't take my eyes off Caroline, a woman who had slept next to me for 6 years, sat across from me at countless dinners, and talked about starting a family with me. Now that she was here, she had just tried to kill my girlfriend and me in a mall parking lot. I was confused by the differences between the two versions of her. How do you handle it when someone you once loved enough to marry tries to kill you? An ambulance arrived after the police siren blaring, and Emma was in terrible pain as they loaded her. While the officers were handcuffing her, she tried to smile at me to reassure me that she was okay. It's only been a year, and you're already walking around with an asterisk. She screamed at the top of her lungs, and everyone around us shrank at the vitriol in her voice in front of dozens of witnesses. She had just tried murder, and in her deranged mind, she somehow was the victim. That's when I realized how utterly insane it all was. I felt as though I was in a distorted parallel universe as I stood there in that packed parking lot watching this woman cheat on me in our bed with a male stranger. She broke our marriage vows, accused me of being the one who caught her, and out of retaliation, prolonged our divorce. She is currently being held for attempted murder while yelling about betrayal and displaying Olympic-level mental gymnastics. She was acting as though I was the bad guy for moving on after she ruined our marriage by cheating. My ex-wife, who used to make me breakfast on Sundays and send me cute texts while I was at work, recently tried to kill 2 people in cold blood. What's the most ridiculous part is that she really seemed to think she had the right to do it, as though I was the bad guy in this story because I caught her cheating. I kept expecting Emma to tell me it was over every time I went to see her. She was crammed into the back of a police car while still yelling profanities and had my girlfriend's blood on my hands from when I tried to help her. She had the misfortune of dating me, and she had to endure months of physical treatment and had her leg in this huge cast. When I told her who the driver was, I couldn't look her in the eye and instead just stared at the hospital floor, waiting for the inevitable, "I can't do this anymore" reaction. At least we know that she was in the hospital, and who could blame her for his crazy soon-to-be ex-wife's desire to use her as a hood ornament 5 months after they began dating. When I asked Emma if she was sure she wanted to stay with me after everything, she gave me a strange look. "Do you really think that I will let her win? I'm going to walk again perfectly fine and she's going to prison. I think I'm going to win this one, the office of court," Emma replied, just reaching for my hand. In fact, she joked about it. This woman was trying to comfort me while she lay in a hospital bed with pins in her leg from my ex-wife's attempted murder. Carolyn's car was the first to circle the parking lot like a shark looking for food. She then parked and watched us for a while. The district attorney was obsessed with this case, and it turned out that the entire event was captured in stunning high definition by numerous security cameras. The video was terrifying, and the DA said it was significant because it showed premeditation. She didn't just happen to see us and lose it. Instead, she tracked us, waited for the right opportunity, and made a deliberate attempt. According to the DA, it was one of the most blatant attempted murder cases she had ever seen. She had video of her passing by our area at least 3 times, and the security footage looked like a scene from a horror movie. You could see how she waited until we were in the perfect position before just flooring as soon as she saw us. The first blow that broke Emma's leg was Carolyn backing up for another attempt, and I pulling Emma between the cars. This cold-blooded, well-planned attempted murder was caught on camera from multiple angles. The most bizarre part was that before she tried to kill us, she was seen on the video checking her makeup in the rearview mirror. She wasn't attempting to commit double homicide, but rather was just adjusting her lipstick as if she were heading to a business meeting. The prosecutor said this was another nail in her coffin because it showed that she was completely. The entire divorce process was put on hold for months as I alternated between the courthouse, the hospital where Emma was recovering, and my job at first. My supervisor was kind, but I was aware that she wasn't a woman who lost her temper out of jealousy. Instead, she carefully planned to kill her ex-husband's new lover and applied cosmetics for her subsequent mugshot because obviously, plotting to kill your ex's new girlfriend is more important than dividing up the china collection. I was living in the courthouse burning through PTO like crazy and spending hours with prosecutors because I could tell his patience was wearing thin after I had to leave work for legal reasons 10 times because my ex-wife couldn't stand the fact that I moved on after she cheated. The trial itself was like watching a masterclass in the art of incarceration, with prosecutors having an ever-growing amount of evidence. First, There were the security cameras that captured Carolyn trying to kill Emma from 6 different angles. The parade of. Even though Emma's leg was still in a cast, she looked stunning on the stand without crying as she described how she saw the car. Witnesses followed, and it seemed like everyone in the parking lot had stayed to testify. According to the stories of the soccer mom who saw the entire incident while carrying groceries, the teenager who recorded it all on his phone, and the retired police officer who grabbed Carolyn before she could finish her task, this was an open-air murder attempt. I had to testify to the jury about the threatening text, the divorce drama, and how I found Carolyn cheating. Carolyn sat there the entire time wiping tissues at her eyes and trying to look regretful, but the jurors saw right through it all. The verdict found it guilty on all counts, including reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder. However, things became frustrating when the 12-year-old broke her leg and knew Carolyn was coming back for another attempt. She was given a 12-year sentence for premeditated attempted murder, but if she behaved well, she might be released much sooner. Charade was bought off by the judge, and she sobbed as she talked about how she lost control and deeply regretted her actions. As I sit there, I think about how she looked at her makeup before trying to kill us. The prosecutor gave me the following explanation: first-time offender, no prior record, expressed regret, etc. She planned to kill 2 people, tracked us, and if the bystander hadn't stopped her, she would have tried a 3rd time. Emma might have died, and I might have died. In addition, if Carolyn does well in prison, she could be released in less than 10 years. This is just one of the oddities of the legal system. You can try to kill someone in front of dozens of witnesses and still get a shorter sentence than a man caught using drugs. What really caught my attention, though, was that Carolyn actually had the. Emma refused to give her the satisfaction of an answer, instead staring her down the entire time. Even though 12 years wasn't what we had hoped for, it was at least 12 years without having to look over our shoulder in parking lots. It's funny how a murder can drastically change a judge's perspective on alimony. Emma had the audacity to turn to the United States during the sentencing process and apologize, saying that she wasn't herself that day, as if there were ever a time when trying to kill people in a parking lot. The divorce process suddenly became very simple after the criminal trial. Carolyn, who looked stunning in her orange jumpsuit, had to attend via video link from prison. The judge swiftly ended her lawyer's attempt to fight for a portion of my assets. It turns out that judges don't feel too sorry for spouses who try to kill their ex-partner's new friends. The court isn't in the business of rewarding attempted murderers with alimony, the judge said, and I quote this: "She got everything she had." The judge rejected all of their demands, including those for the house, alimony, a portion of my 401k, and her personal belongings, clothes, and her jail commissary account prior to the marriage. She eventually played herself after months of dragging out the divorce by making ridiculous requests and delaying appointments. She might have received anything in the divorce if she hadn't tried to make Emma a speed bump, but instead she received divorce papers that basically stated you get nothing and a prison cell, but I couldn't stay there because I had too many memories of that guy breaking in on her. They were always there when I walked through the bedroom door. Emma and I found this amazing place closer to the city center, and it's actually much nicer than my previous apartment. It has a great view of the city, and most importantly, the bedroom isn't haunted by the ghost of my cheating ex-wife. Emma is now fully recovered, and it's barely noticeable that her leg was ever fractured. She jokes that since it removed my. Though insanity doesn't always raise a huge red flag, sometimes it goes undetected until it tries to kill your lover in a parking lot. Psychotic ex getting hit by a car was totally worth it for its dark humor, but whatever gets you through almost dying is better, isn't it? Sometimes I wonder if I could have avoided all of this when she started picking fights over nothing. Perhaps I should have recognized the warning signs when she refused to continue Coop's therapy. Since we met through science fiction books and are currently living our own crazy story with a happy ending, I can say that I'm truly happy right now. Emma and I are talking about getting married next spring, and Carolyn will definitely leave eventually, but that's why restraining orders are in place. Additionally, Emma's father, a firearms instructor, made sure that we both got concealed carry licenses in case Carolyn decided to try again after she leaves, so everything will be under your watch and perhaps stay away from. I appreciate you reading my strange story, and I'd like to read all of your comments, especially the ones about cars. I suppose your ex-wife really ruined that relationship, which is Emma's personal favorite. Mall parking lots if you're going through a divorce or have strange ex-partners. Additionally, if you're dating someone new after a divorce, you might want to look into their background first, or at the very least make sure they're not the type of person who would try to kill someone over a split. Oh, and Emma and I still visit the bookstore. No, we no longer park at that mall. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and press the notification bell to receive updates on more horrific real-life events in your area.